In this lecture, we'll try to understand Amartya Sen and his theory of justice and his idea of equality. Right? There are two things which are going to be on this agenda on this lecture. First thing that we are going to do is is see how Sen criticizes and modifies Rawls. Right? And we are going to understand. We'll try to understand what is his conception of equality is. Where we are trying to understand equality as a topic, right? We are trying to understand equality as a topic, but we'll keep that aside for a second and we'll try to understand Sain's modification in Rawls' theory of justice, which will be helpful to us to understand Sain's theory of equality of capabilities. So, connected theories, very easy to understand. Don't worry. Big words have been used by Sain, but uh, not really hard to understand, very Indian, very Indianized, and very easy to understand. Right? Amartya Sen. Amartya Sen, who was Amartya Sen? Amartya Sen was a Harvard graduate who Harvard graduate Bengali, who won Nobel Prize in 1998 for economics. He was a social liberal. He was a social liberal. He won Nobel Prize. This is important because you can start your answer with this intro, Nobel laureate, and that adds to your answer. You give some background of the scholar, and that adds to your answer, that you are explaining and you know about the scholar as well. So Amartya Sen is a consequentialist economist. Consequentialist in both sense, philosophically and in real life. Sen's ideas had a big butterfly effect. Sen's ideas changed the way public policies of the countries were made. Right? Before this, before Sen, people were talking about equality in the sense, in the sense of welfare, in the sense of resources, in the sense of law, in the sense of opportunity, in the sense of outcome, but nobody was talking about human behind that equality. That is where Amartya Sen comes in, and that is the importance of Sen. That people should not talk about welfare, outcome, resources, or opportunity. We should be limited to people only, and we should talk about their capabilities, their worldviews, their ideas, than outcome and everything else. That is the idea behind Saint. That is the importance of Saint, and that is why we are studying Saint, because he gave a paradigmatic shift in equality and gave conception of equality in terms of capabilities. Will make an interlinkage to positive liberty theory as well. T.S. Green and his theory will also be interlinked here. Okay. But first we'll start with modification in Rawls' theory of justice by Sen. What is Rawls' theory of justice? What is Rawls' theory of justice? In one line, if I have to summarize, I will say this: maximum equal liberty will lead to inequality. Such inequality is permitted if and only if such inequality leads to greatest advantage to least advantaged. Right? This is Rawls' theory of justice, more or less. right? Basically, what Rawls wants to say that that the least advantaged should be given resources in their hands, right? This is what the debates eventually leads to, that least advantaged should be equalized in terms of resources, in terms of resources. Least advantage should be equalized in terms of resources. This is Rawls theory of justice. This is Rawls theory of justice. But but what Rawls did not do, what Rawls did not do is he did not equalize people in capabilities, in natural talents. Least advantage should be equalized in terms of resources so that it should lead to greatest advantage of least advantage, right? And this does not lead to level playing field. Why it does not lead to level playing field? It sort of leads to level playing field, but 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 the way it leads to level playing field is not acceptable to both Dworkin and Sen. So Dworkin suggests equality of resources, and Sen suggests equality of capabilities. We have understood Dworkin's idea of equality of resources, whereby you compensate for brute luck and you compensate in a such a way that it does not lead to it does not lead to envy, that everyone is happy with their bunch. That is the idea, right? What Sane is against in Rawls, in Rawls is that Rawls equalize people, or Rawls compensate the least advantage in terms of resources again and again, until the least advantage do not get at par with the cream of the society. Till then, till then, they should be they should be there should be a policy which leads to greatest advantage of least advantage. That is the idea. Until until the least advantage do not become at par with the cream, the resource allocation should continue. The resource allocation should continue. Against this resource allocation, until the least advantage come at par with the cream of the society, till then resource allocation should continue. Against this idea, Sen suggests that resource allocation is not the goal. Goal is in terms of capabilities. So why are we going in resource allocation? Lead them to have capabilities only. Do such programs, do such capacity building measures, so that people will be equalized in terms of capabilities, in terms of primary goods, in terms of natural talents. Natural talents. This is what Sen says. Sen says that there is no need to compensate the least advantage if you equalize them in terms of capabilities, which is primary goods or natural talents, right? Which is primary good or rational natural talents. I will explain this in more detail because I feel the language used by Sen was a bit academic, was a bit elite. So explaining this will take some time. Still, I'll try and I'll explain this again and again. I'll try to explain this in easiest possible language. So, so what is Rawls for? Rawls is for compensating the least advantage until they are at par with the cream, the elite of the society. Sen says there is no need to compensate the least advantaged. There is no need. What is the need is to equalize them in terms of capabilities. What they do with their capabilities is none of our business. What we should do is equalize the least advantage in terms of capabilities, in terms of primary goods, and in terms of natural talents. Basically, give them skills, not the job. Job will come to themselves automatically. Right? Learn for skill, not the job. Sen said that in different way. If you give a non-capable person job directly, he will not do good work. He will remain least advantaged, and that cycle will go on. So Sen suggests don't do that. Don't give them job. Don't give them direct money. Equalize them in terms of capabilities. Job will come to them. They will work. They will work, and they will get to a better position in their life. If you remember, if you remember, uh, Bob Jessup, Miliband and Pulunza, that debate. Bob Jessup says when a society moves from Fordism to post-Fordism, when economy moves from Fordism to post-Fordism, society moves from Keynesian to Schumpeterian. Schumpeterian post-national workforce. What is Keynesian? Keynesian is a welfare economy, welfare society. It is like Rawls. It wants to do good for its people. It wants. It does not. It does not care if the person is working or not. If a person is marginalized, Keynesian economy will do welfare of that person. But what Schumpeterian idea does, or what Schumpeter does, is this: that he says that I will state should give skills to its workers, and the workers will help themselves. That is the exact same idea. That is the exact same idea. Rawls say that. Rawls say equalize in terms of resources, continued welfare until they become at par with the cream. And Sen suggests no. Sen is like Schumpeter, and he suggests give them skills, give them education, give them capabilities, so that they will do good for themselves. There is no need to decide their outcome. Right? That is the basic idea behind sense equality of capabilities. Now going ahead, we have to understand sense criticism of Rawls. We have to understand sense criticism of Rawls. Rawls give a principle. Rawls give a principle which is universal. What is his principle? What is his principle? Principle dignity. He says that dignity is an absolute universal principle which should be applied everywhere. This universalization of singular principle, this deontological exercise of Rawls was criticized by Amartya Sen by calling this Rawls theory of justice to be transcendental institutionalism. He called Rawls theory of justice to be transcendental institutionalism. This is a criticism of Rawls theory of justice that Sen calls Rawls theory of justice to be transcendental institutionalism. He basically wants to say that. He basically wants to say that how how do you arrive at dignity as your universal principle? Right? You arrive to a such principle by keeping rational negotiators behind veil of ignorance. But this is not true. This does not happen in real life, right? Universal idea of justice is not applicable everywhere. Against this transcendental institutionalism, this universalization of a principle of justice, Amartya Sen says that no, I am not for this. I am for particularist idea of justice. Real persons, real societies will decide what my idea of justice is. It is very much communitarian, right? The idea is very much communitarian, very particularist, not universal, very to the people, right? To the people. So he criticizes Rawls' theory of justice to be transcendental institutionalism. What is transcendentalism? Transcendentalism is beyond time. Institutionalism is you are you are establishing an institution which you say is beyond time. Dignity as a principle was universalized, transcendentalized, and institutionalized by Rawls as absolute principle. This this idea that dignity is transcendental institutionalism was criticized by Amartya Sen, and he says that Rawls' theory of justice is rational choice approach. Rational choice approach of theory building. What is rational choice approach of theory building? Right? In rational choice approach of theory building, your goal is to find universal idea of justice. You are trying to find universal idea of justice. And how do you find this universal idea of justice? By 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 conducting a thought experiment, by conducting a thought experiment, going beyond wheel of ignorance and thinking on behalf of abstract individuals. When abstract individuals do dialectics of a kind, do a thought experiment, they will arrive at and they will arrive at an absolute principle of justice. For Rawls, it was dignity. For Rawls, it was dignity. This idea, this idea was was not accepted by Sen. That you cannot arrive at universal idea of justice through a thought experiment on behalf of abstract individuals. In rational choice approach, theory becomes very abstract. It is metaphysical. It has no practical implications. Principles cannot be applied in practical world. That is the cons of rational choice approach. That you become very metaphysical, right? You become very metaphysical. Then against this rational choice approach, Sen give Sen gives his social choice approach. What is social choice approach? Social choice approach think communitarians, think society. What Sen basically wanted to say that real persons in real societies will come up with such principles which can be applicable in their particular society. This is social choice approach. Real persons in real societies will come up with such principles which can be applicable in their societies. To justify his, to justify his social choice approach and to criticize rational choice approach, Sen gave this story of three children. He gives story of three children and a flute. Sen's story Sen's story of three children and a flute. He says that there are three children, Anne, Bob, and Carla. Anne is Anne is utilitarian. No, sorry. Anne is libertarian. Bob is Marxist, and sorry, Anne is utilitarian. Bob is Marxist, and Carla is libertarian. Right? Utilitarian. Anne is utilitarian. So remember Bentham. What will Bentham say? Bob is Marxist, so Marx, and libertarian. You can go back to Nozick and his entertainment theory of justice. He wanted to criticize, basically, he wanted to criticize Bentham, Marx, and Nozick, but he says, and Bob Carla. And Bob Carla, these are three children, and there is one flute. All of these three children have claim on this single flute, that they want this flute, right? They want this flute. When these three children want their food, they give their reasoning, right? They give their reasoning. And says, and says, and says, I know how to play this flute, right? I know how to play this flute. I can utilize this flute in the best possible way. I can utilize this flute in the best possible way. Bob comes. Bob says, I am poor. I have no other toys to play. I have no other toys to play. I want this flute because I am poor. I want this flute because I have nothing else to play. Carla says that Carla says that I have made this flute with my hard labor, and it took me months to make this flute. Right? I have applied my labor on property, and I am entitled to it. Right? These three people, whose claim do you think is most convincing? Utilization, poorness, or labor? Who do you think has the best claim on that flute? Or who do you think you should give this flute to? Is there any singular answer? No. No. There is no single principal answer. There is no one singular answer that this question has, that who are you going to give this flute? You are going to give this flute to someone who will utilize the flute the best possible way, or to someone who does not have any other toys, or to someone who has made this toy with a lot of labor. There is no singular conception, or there is no singular principle which will suggest us, or which will guide us to who should we give this flute to. So he suggests, if there is confusion in this flute, then how there is so much clarity when we are distributing resources among the people of the state, right? So he suggests that there should be not one conception of justice. There should be not one conception of justice, but principle of justice should be practical. and should be realization focused. Principle of justice should be consequential. There is no singular answer, there is no true answer, there is no perfect transcendental principle that will guide us to moksha. Your action should be based on the consequence of a particular action, that is it, right? Your action should be based on based on the consequence of a particular action, and that should be your principle. So he discards any foundationalism, any universalization, any any particular principle of justice which is universal, but he suggests that we should have we should be compromisable, and we should compromise with our conception of justice with respect to the the situation, with respect to the consequence of an action. And this on this background, that that we should not have absolute principle as our principle of justice. Sen gives his theory of comparative justice against Rawls' theory of justice. Against Rawls' theory of justice. What is Sen's theory of comparative justice mean? Right? Rawls' theory is deontological, right? It cares about means, it cares about procedure. Sen's theory is realization focused. Sense theory talks about ends. Sense theory talks about consequences. To explain his theory, Sen brings out concept of niti and nyaya. Niti and nyaya of Indian philosophy. Niti very simply means deontology, right? Do not overcomplicate your mind. Niti simply means deontology. Nyaya basically means consequentialism. We are not going to be very particularist in understanding this. We will just try to understand with respect to your topic, right? Niti means deontology, nyaya means consequentialism. As simple as that. Do not try to hodgepodge your mind. Keep it very simple. So what is niti? Deontology. What is niti? Procedure, right? What is nyaya? Consequentialism. What is nyaya? Realization of action, basically consequentialism. And he opens up debate of Bhagavad Gita. He opens up, he gives example of dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna and Arjuna, Krishna and Arjuna. The very famous dialogue of Bhagavad Gita. When whole war stops, Krishna sees Arjuna's moral dilemma of I am killing my own blood. Arjuna sees his teacher, his family, his cousins, all on the battlefield. He sees on his side that his five brothers are there, his grandchildren are there, his children are there. He says, he says, if if we go to this war, my friends, my teachers, my cousins, my own brothers and sisters will die, and there will be a lot of bloodshed. So what Arjun sees is consequence. Arjuna sees nyaya of an action. Arjuna sees nyaya of an action. Arjuna sees destruction and bloodshed due to war. Right? Arjuna says consequences. He says to Krishna that Parth, he says to Krishna that Krishna, I am not able to get to myself to the mindset that I have to fight this war because a lot of bloodshed will happen from my side and other side which is also my blood. So I am against this war. So Arjuna becomes a bit overwhelmed with the idea that he has to go to this war, which is going to be very destructive, and he's not able to fight. So war stops, or they get into a dimension in which time stops, whatever that situation is. So war stops. Krishna starts talking to Arjuna. Krishna says that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are stacked up against. Krishna says your battle is bigger than the bloodshed that is going to be there. Bloodshed is a small price. Destruction is a small price which you are paying. Krishna says, Arjuna, your your dharma is of Kshatriya. You are a Kshatriya. You cannot run back. You cannot run back from the war. You have to fight this war. Why you have to fight this war? Because you are a Kshatriya and you have to uphold dharma. You have to uphold dharma. धर्म की जीत हो. धर्म की जीत हो. That was the message that was given by Krishna to Arjuna. So Krishna is saying to Arjuna that even though a lot of bloodshed is going to be there, you have to fight the war because your dharma says so. So Krishna is very deontological. Meanwhile, Arjuna is seeing consequence. So, so Amartya Sen, Amartya Sen is on side of Nyaya, is on side of Arjuna. Amartya Sen says that Krishna was wrong. Krishna was wrong, and Arjuna is correct. Arjuna is correct because suffering, destruction could have been avoided if Krishna had seen realization focused approach. So Amartya Sen criticized a literal god in Hindu mythology by saying that he was wrong, right? And says that there should be not a singular principle of justice, there should be multiple principle of justice. This idea that there should not be singular conception of justice was criticized by Pratap Bhanu Mehta, a very big scholar in Indian government and politics. We are going to understand that, and we are going to understand his views as well. But for now, what Pratap Bhanu Mehta says that he says that sense theory is full of ambiguities and confusion. We need we need a basic minimum principle, right? This is Sen's theory of justice. Now we'll try to understand and connect to this theory of justice his conception of equality, which is equality of capabilities. Equality of capabilities. What does he mean by equality of capabilities? Right? What is his theory of justice? Realization focused approach. Do such things which will be of good consequences to you, right? His theory of capabilities is exactly the same theory. right? It is exactly the same theory. Rawls suggest Rawls or Dworkin effectively suggest the same thing, that equalize people in terms of resources. Rawls suggest that equalize people in terms of resources as long as they are least advantaged. Right? It does not matter if they are least advantaged for 60 years, 70 years, we have to keep giving them resources. Dworkin says Dworkin says that no, equalize them only once, compensate for their good luck and stop. Rawls says no, I will equalize people, I will give them resources continuously. Dworkin says equalize only once. This is the basic difference between Rawls and Dworkin. But they do both talk about equality in terms of resources. Equality in terms of resources. Sen, on the other hand, Sen wants to equalize people in terms of capabilities. Sen wants to equalize people in terms of capabilities. Capability, according to him, capability, according to him, is ability to do something, right? Ability to do something. It is sense of well-being. It is having freedom to make choices. Capabilities is ability to do something, sense of well-being, and having freedom to make choices. Right? Capabilities in general sense can be understood as capacity as well. Capacity to do something. Right? Capacity to do something. Why you need ability to do something? Why you need sense of well-being, or why you need having freedom to make choices? Why you need that? To achieve functionality. If you remember in economic geography, in human geography, or in human economy, there is this concept of human development index. Human development index, if I'm not wrong, has three criterias, one of which is health, income, and education, something like that, right? So Sen and Mehboob Haq basically came up with a human development index in which there is health, education, and income. So this health, education, income is basically capability. If you have health, if you have education, if you have income, you are a capable person. What Sen basically says that equalize people in terms of health, education, and income. That is it. Maybe not even income, only health and education. Increase their capability to do something, right? What is equality of capability then? To achieve functionality, to do something which one want to do. It is ability to do something or ability not to do something, or basically having to make choices, or a sense of well-being. Why do you need ability to achieve functionality, right? What is functionality? A choice. It is basically a choice, one not doing another thing. It is a choice. If you are hungry, you don't have choice. It is a deprivation. If you are fasting or you are on a diet, it is a choice. It is not deprivation. You are eating which is healthy. It is a part of your well-being. It is part of your functionality. Hungry hungry basically mean you are deprived. You don't have choice, right? This is functionality. If you have capability to choose, you achieve functionality. If you have capability, you can achieve functionality. That is the basic idea behind his theory of equality of capabilities. It is like ability to do something. This theory was given by Sen in his book Development as as Freedom. Right? Development as freedom. This idea of development as freedom we have seen in T.S. Green and his idea of positive liberty. This is basically the same idea. Positive liberty is basically the same idea. You are increasing capacity of people to enjoy their liberty more. Capacity of people to enjoy their liberty more. Development as freedom. Exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Right? And this is the idea behind behind his equality of capabilities. In this context and in this situation, what Sen says that, what Sen says that, and what Sen brings out, and what Sen justifies his theory with is Buddhist ideal of minimizing suffering. Minimizing suffering. Why to write a theory of justice? Why to write equality of capabilities? Why to develop capabilities among the people? Because he wants to he wants to minimize suffering. He wants to do development of people to minimize suffering. What is development? It is capacity building. It is it is reducing deprivation. It is achieving functionality. Right? Functionality means choice to do whatever one wants to do. Achieving functionality. All these things will lead to development as freedom. This is the basic idea of Sen. This were the ideas as given by Sen. I hope you understood Amartya Sen. This was quite philosophically deep topic. I feel I feel this was a really heavy topic, and thank you so much for bearing this with me. Bye bye.